afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and coming at the fag end of an afternoon session with a lot of industry stalwarts and insiders talking about new space and space economy. Allow me some time to talk about it from an outsider's perspective, right? We've heard a lot about new space and it's about privatization of the space sector, so on and so forth. You know, we did a small research in terms of finding out the latest technologies that is being researched globally in the space sector. And when we really looked at it, we find that the international universities and academia are far, far ahead in some of the new areas, be it latest generation sensors, be it better space debris management or space situational awareness, or things like anti-satellites, cloaking, better maneuvering in low Earth orbits, green and lighter propulsion systems, so on and so forth. So while we talk about new space as a space that is being heralded by the private sector in India, I would also like to submit that we also consider new space as a bunch of newer space technologies that India has really got to adopt so that we do not lag behind in the global dialogue. Now, again, if you think behind, why are we lagging behind in the global dialogue, and why is the real value of the space economy not being realized? Just to give an example, there are a lot of numbers that are being thrown in terms of the size of the space sector in India. Just to put in perspective, Byju's was valued at $22 billion, right? Now, what does it mean for us? Is it because the value from the space sector is not getting realized by the common man? By an enterprise and a consumer, is the value not getting realized? How can you change the narrative? Does a student in the 10th class or 12th class know that he or she is able to better navigate on the road, or better traffic is being managed thanks to space-based applications? Do the people know that some of the disasters in the country are getting prevented because of advanced notifications coming from weather forecasting systems and other systems coming from space? Is space such an esoteric field that we are not commonizing the dialogue and the conversation that is really happening at the grassroots level? Can that also be a definition of new space, right? So first definition, new technology. Second definition, in terms of changing the narrative so that the en masse adoption of space as a field that people are really enthralled to get into can happen. Now, how does all of these things happen? My submission is that these things can happen with only one operative word, and that operative word is collaboration. We talked about policy, we talked about multiple changes. Every single distinguished speaker talked about the various changes that had to be made in terms of policy and how well we have been growing. Perhaps we also have to, as a nation, look at better systems of collaboration between the established players, the current startups that are currently there, and the academia in a much better fashion. Only when this whole ecosystem gets enthused does the real vision of a spacefaring nation can be realized. Another example of collaboration that I would like to bring in is in terms of design and R&D. We heard some speakers talking about build to print and ISRO giving the designs and we print. And can there be better ways of innovation in terms of the designs being developed by ISRO in terms of industry consultations? Can there be open industry consultations with the private sector in terms of some of the newer technologies that we're talking about? Can there be collaboration in that particular area? And lastly, can we make collaboration real to make space tech reachable to the common man? Perhaps it is not just the space scientists or the people sitting in this room. When designers, academicians, students, common men, all of us start talking about space and how space economy or the space technology is allowing us to make our life much better, simpler, perhaps that's a time when new space has really arrived. In closing, what I'm saying is that it's time that the established players in space, ISPA, ISRO, NSIL, everybody come together along with the private sector space players. And before I close, there is some statistic that said that the total number of private sector space players in the country is somewhere around 400. And 80% of them have been supporting ISRO in the manufacturing operations. And a majority of the new space sector players that are coming up are in the downstream operations. What does it mean for new space? That's a question that many of us have to ponder. What do we really do to make sure that private sector players are coming up in the upstream business areas? Downstream, yes, applications are immense, possibilities are immense. Perhaps downstream is an easier path to take. So what are the policy incentives that the government and the established players can do to bring private sector players in the upstream or even midstream in terms of ground stations, so on and so forth? So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we see new space has arrived, new space in terms of significant amount of private participation. Perhaps we should also really aim to bring new space in India from a new technology perspective, from a better collaboration perspective, and most importantly, changing the narrative of space and space value adds for the common man. Thank you. Jai Hind.